board are ignoring their member's position and fighting that position in court.
All right, thank you for that clarity.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to move to our discussion item, Phoenix Center next steps. So the city of Pontiac owns a 42-year-old, 43-year-old parking structure in downtown Pontiac. You know it commonly as the Phoenix Center. It has not been fully utilized for public use in recent years, but you likely drive under it many times a week. So it is over Orchard Lake and Auburn running east-west, and it is where Saginaw Street, South Saginaw Street dead ends and stops on both sides. It's a very large parking structure. The city owns the structure itself, and therefore the obligation and the burden of the structure. But most importantly, the city, all of us, we own the land that it sits on. And so for next steps, we have in recent days been approached by Oakland County with interest in transferring some property and exchanging property and assets because, as was noted, the state of Michigan has given to Oakland County or authorized to Oakland County $50 million for their downtown Pontiac initiatives, and that includes them guaranteeing at least 500 employees from Oakland County to occupy office space in downtown Pontiac. They are purchasing two 43-year-old office towers, formerly built by General Motors. So they are commonly called the Ottawa Towers. And so that is a private real estate transaction that they are actively undergoing. But as they have gone through their due diligence, they have undertaken some engineering studies, some appraisals, and have communicated that with the city through legal counsel, some of that information. And so we wanted to make sure the community knew that those conversations have just begun and that we will not be making any formal decisions until we bring them to a formal city council meeting. And I just want to make sure that everyone knew those at the very top level that those negotiations have initiated. And I want to give the floor to Mayor Greimel, who's been negotiating very heavily to make sure it's as best possible terms for Pontiac and our taxpayers. But I'll point out, you've probably heard over the years different big numbers thrown out about what it would cost to bring the Phoenix Center up to standards, and also what it would cost if the city pursued bringing that structure down, what it would cost for demolition. So the current price tag for short-term just stabilizing it, getting an operation, getting the electricity hooked up, is $20 million, $20.3 million. And the cost to make it modern and be able to last for another 40 years is, with that 20, it's another $40 million. So it looks at all in $62 million to make it really rockin' and rollin', to make it that 3,000 spot parking structure fully functional, because there is a sort of a life cycle of this concrete, and it can't last forever, especially with certain standards that were being used to make it modern. So the question that we as a community have to decide is, what's the best route? Is it to try and keep what's currently there and pour that money in to try and make it viable, and then convince Oakland County to partner with us on that money into that older structure? Or do we want to go the costly route of demolition, also an unpleasant cost, and that dollar amount is $12 million to demolish? That's what one engineering estimate is putting at for removing the structure, order please, in a way that does not damage the three buildings that are attached to it. And then also we have two major thoroughfares, well, one major thoroughfare that goes underneath it, and the impact that that has. So, of course, there are other figures that we will continue to look at, but I just want to make sure the community knew about some of those figures that were coming in, and I'll give the floor now to Mayor Greimel about other active negotiations being made, because we want to make this work well, and work for the long haul that doesn't saddle us with a lot of cost. Because when they were putting this package together in the early 1980s, I am certain they did not imagine what was set into motion decades later in terms of large cost to the taxpayers that we have had to pay a burden for. Mayor Greimel?
Well, thank you. A few things I think are really important to emphasize. One is, and I've said this publicly many times, and I want to reiterate it tonight, because the city owns the property where the Phoenix Center is and still owns the Phoenix Center structure, nothing can occur with this property in terms of conveying this property or ownership of this property to anybody else, or in terms of demolishing the Phoenix Center without approval of council. I've made that very clear many times, but I know we heard someone tonight try to suggest that somehow council doesn't understand its authority here. Council clearly understands its authority here, and we're working collaboratively with council to try to determine what's in the best interest of the city and our residents. So I want to be really clear about that. I also want to be really clear that nothing that has been proposed by the county or is being discussed, this transaction has nothing whatsoever in any way to do with Phoenix Center Apartments. Phoenix Center Apartments is privately owned. It is not subject to anything that the county is doing. And Phoenix Center Apartments will not be affected by any of these decisions in any way. I also just want to reflect for a moment on some of the ironies of what the previous mayor has said. Because the previous mayor has repeatedly said that the county's proposal to pay $19-some million to the current owner is, quote, a sweetheart deal or various other terms. What I do know is that the county paying the current owner any dollar amount has nothing to do with the city. It's not city dollars being used for that. What are being used for that are county dollars and potentially state dollars, because the county has received or is slated to receive $50 million in state assistance related to this project. What's ironic is that the previous mayor is objecting to the county using county dollars or state dollars to pay 19-point-some million dollars to the current owner, when the previous mayor herself orchestrated a deal that paid $19+ million of city dollars to the previous owner of those towers. And so I don't understand why the previous mayor is more concerned with potentially wasting county or state dollars than she was with a waste of city dollars. Now, what she might say is that, well, the difference is that when that was done, the now owner of the Phoenix Center has to fix up the Phoenix Center. Unfortunately, under the previous mayor's watch, the agreement with the current owner was so horribly written that it's extremely hard to enforce because it's very vague. It says they have to improve the Phoenix Center, but it doesn't say to what degree or to what condition. It's very loosey-goosey, and it doesn't make it clear what the city's rights are to enforce it. And as a result, the only way to even try to enforce it would be many years of litigation after the previous mayor already had us in court for many years with the previous owner of Ottawa Towers. And that's a road we don't want to go down. Lastly, I don't think anybody is saying that the Phoenix Center has zero value, but what is clear is that no matter what course of action is taken, whether it's fixed up or whether it's demolished and replaced by a new parking structure and new public space with performance space for downtown performances, regardless of which of those avenues is taken, it is going to be an enormous cost of tens of millions of dollars. And I can tell you that the county would not be pursuing any arrangement if it weren't for the fact that the state is providing $50 million to the county. I can also tell you that the previous mayor's convoluted deal with the Phoenix Center left the city with $6 million of debt, and we still owe, as the city, about $5 million because of that debt that the previous administration left us with. And I was able to secure $5 million from the state in the current budget to completely pay off that debt and eliminate that debt, not at the expense of Pontiac's residents, but using state assistance, which is a huge win. And the total amount of funding that the city received in the recent budget is $15 million, 15. $5 million to eliminate the debt on the Phoenix Center that the previous mayor saddled us with, and an additional $10 million to fix the Martin Luther King Bridge. And I fought very hard to secure those two major pots of funding. In addition, $50 million is going to the county. Now, the sum of all that is $65 million by my math. I don't know where the figure of $70 million came from. And we're going to make sure, in collaboration with City Council, that any decision made regarding the Phoenix Center property is made with the best interests of the future of our community, the future of our residents, the well-being of our taxpayers, and the creation of public space in our downtown that improves the lives of all of our residents, front and center, and at the heart of any arrangement.
Councilman Rutherford.
Remember these apartments called Cabrini Green Apartments in Chicago? And I remember watching this documentary on how they told these people, oh, we're not going to tear it down. It's going to be all right. Cabrini Greens are gone now. I bring that up to make a point. There's a real concern about what is going to happen at the Phoenix Place Apartments. And although the county has nothing to do with it right now, eventually there's going to be a discussion. That's what my issue is with that. That's the first thing. Number two, we can go back and forth about what the previous administration did or didn't do, but if we stick to what we know, we won't have to keep doing this, because it appears as though we're defending something that has absolutely nothing to do with us. If it has nothing to do with us, why are we defending it, man? Like, we're wasting time. Thirdly, the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because this is all happening in my district. So I'm hearing it from both sides. And there's a fear that people who are poor are going to be moved out of this building. Number one, this is real. They can sugarcoat it, whatever you want. That's what it is. Number two, that we are not going to have all the information. And that's where the mistrust is coming. So I'm saying all this to say, man, we got to stop this. We don't have to keep going back and forth about stuff you know that's true. If you know it's true, stick to what you know. It's so frustrating to me because we sit here and talk about this deal and it ain't even finalized yet. Do y'all realize that? It's not finalized. That means they can change their mind. Number two, we all know we need to build our downtown, but the way we're doing this, and I'm saying it, and I'm on this council, I wouldn't want to deal with us. This is BS, man. Every week, we're deflecting, defending. It ain't even finalized. Stop doing that, because you're giving people more ammo to talk about stuff we ain't even got nothing to do with. Thank you.
Other discussion? Mayor Grimel for a second time.
Yeah, I want to be clear. Yes, we want to look forward, and that's what we're doing. That's why we're going to be making decisions about this site that are in the best interest of our residents. But at the same time, we do have an obligation to address misinformation, because if misinformation is spread and doesn't go rebutted, people will assume it's true. And yes, we want to make sure that the interests of Phoenix Place Apartments are safeguarded. But again, it's important for people to know the truth, which is this proposal has nothing to do with Phoenix Place Apartments. And Cabrini Green was owned by the city or other governmental entities. It was a public housing project owned by government. In the case of Phoenix Center Place Apartments, it's a private owner that has nothing to do with anything we're discussing here. And it's important that people know that so that they're not afraid of this deal affecting Phoenix Place Apartments.
So,
To clarify, Cabrini Green's the Chicago site?
yeah, but
Okay.
I have a
You have-
rebuttal.
No one
Okay.
else? For a second time, Councilman
So
Rutherford.
let's be clear before people try to make it more than what it is. Detroit HUD is a part of what happens at the Phoenix Place Apartments. Everybody knows that. They are managed by a private thing, but the Detroit Housing Commission runs that building. If you didn't know, that's documented. So it is ran by a private entity, but the HUD is a part of that building.
It's all private.
It is.
Councilman Rutherford
I
has the
didn't
floor.
interrupt you. If you want to go back and forth, we can. I'm just
Councilman
saying.
Rutherford, you have the floor.
Okay. What I'm saying is you have a right to do misinformation, but it's getting to the point where it's getting convoluted and the deal is not final. That's all I'm trying to say. It's not We just got to stop all of this because the rumor mill is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. At the end of the day, we look like we're not ready for this big change. If ain't nobody else going to say it, I'm going to say it. Because that's what it's coming up at. We're arguing over something that is not finalized. We're arguing about points that we already know. If it was mishandled by the previous administration, we've already proven that. We did the audit. We don't have to keep doing all this stuff. That's all I'm saying. And if it makes you offended, it should not, because it's not personal. It's the projection, just like emails being sent out. It's the projection, how we do stuff and we handle it wrong, and then we have to go back and try to clean it up and make it nice. That's all I'm trying to say.
Any final discussion on Phoenix Center next steps? Mayor Grimo, I want to flag that in its current lease arrangement with the owner of the Ottawa Towers, they are responsible for mitigating graffiti, correct? So that before the transaction between the private owner and the county, my understanding, because I think that they've painted over graffiti, I just want to flag that on the Water Street side of the building, there's some somewhat colorful, somewhat clever, but still graffiti nonetheless, basically behind the bus stop. I know they've painted over it before. I just want to flag for, and I know the code enforcement manager's here.
Yep.
So I know that might change very soon if the county's transaction goes through with the private owner, but in the meantime, it should be addressed.
Yes, I appreciate you flagging that. I was not aware of that. If it's on the wall of the Phoenix
It is.
Center, it is the responsibility of the lessee the lessee of the Phoenix Center who owns the two towers.
Thank you. So just want to flag that on Water Street behind the commonly known as the Smart Bus Stop. Hearing no further discussion on Phoenix Center next steps, is there a motion to adopt the resolution to proceed in closed session moved by Councilman Rutherford? Supported by Councilman Parker. We'd proceed in a closed session pursuant to Section 8, subsection D of the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.268, subsection D, to consider the purchase or lease of real property. Hearing no discussion, roll call on the motion to go into closed session. Clerk Doyle.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yeah.
Carrington.
Yes.
5 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. We are in closed session as of 9:07 p.m. We'll vote to come out of closed session and continue with the agenda at that point. You are welcome to stay. You are welcome to depart, and we'll move on from there.